Hey guys, Megan here.
And I'm Stephanie.
We are
Barn Besties
with Farm Fresh Advice.
We're here today with Susan Friedland, the author of Marguerite, Misty, and Me. This book right here. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. This is fun.
Misty.
Yes.
Misty and Misty in your vintage t-shirts.
And don't forget Marguerite Henry, the woman who brought Misty to us all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So she wrote this book. It's been out approximately 2 years. She was kind enough to send copies to Megan and I for our reading pleasure. And we're here to ask all the things about Marguerite and the book and yourself. Are you ready for this?
I am so ready.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a Marguerite Henry fangirl. So I was one of those horse crazy kids that didn't have a horse and begged my parents. And, we didn't live in the country. And so my entry point was through the books at the library. And I happened upon this lovely Misty of Chincoteague, and I read it and loved it. And then I started reading a number of the other Marguerite Henry books. And I thought it was really cool. When I was around 12, my parents met some people through small town politics that had horses in their backyard. And actually the woman was a member of the Wayne DuPage Hunt. This is outside of Chicago. And so she said, "Oh, your daughter likes horses. Have her come out and ride ours." So that was very generous. And this is before cell phones, riding helmets. We had the little hunt caps, but never wore them.
Did you actually wear them? You didn't wear them.
Oh, no. Cause,
I didn't either.
That was like for showing.
But
But
you only wrote them when you showed.
yeah.
Because they were just part of the dress code.
Right. So my mom would drop me off, and I would hop on this 25-year-old bald-faced quarter horse named Jim Dandy, and there were several other girls there around my same age, and we just rode through the fields and trails over by Pratt's Wayne Woods. It's the farm is actually right across the street from Lamplight Equestrian Center.
I was going to ask you that
it's
after.
right across the street.
This is just an amazing book because just like you found out the coincidences of you and Marguerite, and I'm reading this and I'm like, I showed at Lamplight. I had no idea there were trails.
I know. I knew, but you never got a chance because you're there to show.
Yeah. And then I was like, where is the farm? So anyway, sorry to interrupt, guys.
We're all wondering where is the farm.
No, we love tangent. Yeah. So I'll give you a little hint where the actual farm where Misty lived back in the day.
Go find it.
Well, you won't see it from the road. Mole Meadow is the name. So, but I didn't know this. Like, I knew she was like my favorite author, and I did find out while I was writing with those girls that Marguerite Henry had once lived in Wayne, and so I thought that was cool. But then, like, the fact that I was with horses and so consumed with writing and that, then you kind of lose the angsty, sitting at home and all you have is a book.
Right.
So it didn't occur to me. By this time, she had relocated to Rancho Santa Fe, California. The house where she lives there is very close to Mary's Tack and Feed.
Okay, I have to interject again because I ran off when I was 15 to Rancho Santa Fe to ride. Yeah. Like, this is just so wild. When I read that, and then we just did a live stream with Ellie of Mary's Tack and Feed. So anyway, continue.
It's a small,
very small world.
Community. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't even know where. So the house where Misty and Marguerite. It's a private home today, so I can't really tell you where it is, but it's off Army Trail Road. If you've been to Wayne, there is a castle, the Dunham Castle. Yep. And so it's thereabouts in that area. Yeah, it's kind of close-ish to, there's a little church in town, a little white steeple church, not far from there. But it's private property, and like you can't really see it because there's so many trees. But it's cool knowing it's there. And on the corner, actually, across from the Dunham Castle, there is a meadow, and there's a sign that says Misty's Meadow, but that's not really where she grazed and where she lived, but it's close enough.
Oh, that's wild.
That's exciting. Did it take a lot of arm wrestling to get people to pony up with where she actually had lived? You kind of talk about it in the book, and you're like, people don't really want to give it up, but it was pretty obvious you had figured it out or found out.
Honestly,
I talk about it.
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I do know that I sent some letters to the homeowner, and they weren't answered. I sent a lot of letters. I sent a letter to Leif Garrett, the the teen heartthrob from the 70s and 80s, because he actually starred in one of Marguerite Henry's books, was adapted to film, and he was like the lead character. So I thought, that might make his day. I found his address, not to be a stalker, but it was like a condo in Los Angeles. Sure. And so anyway, but I never heard. But I did hear back from some people. So
and you talk about that in the book.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat.
And so after growing up, you were a teacher.
I was
correct?
a teacher for 22 years, 2 years in the city of Chicago, and had a very long barn commute. And then I spent most of my career in Southern California, in Arcadia, which is, if you've ever watched Breeders' Cup, and actually where the Olympics are going to be, the equestrian events for the 2028 Olympics at Santa Anita Racetrack. I taught in that same community there. And that's actually where my horse that I have now, Tis a Knight, so he's an 18-year-old off-check thoroughbred. That's where he won his one race in his racing career. And a friend tipped me off, so if I didn't know this, and I had another thoroughbred before. I don't know if your audience is into thoroughbreds, but
you have a broad, vast
audience. So if your horse has a win at a track, you can track down the photographer, and there should be a winner's circle photo. So I found that, and to my delight, he was ridden by Victor Espinosa, the Triple Crown winning jockey.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. Very cool. Yeah, but he only won by a nose.
Hey, but he won.
But you know what? He really won because he's not that competitive. He's got a very laid back personality, and so I think in his mind he knew, like, if I go slow, maybe some nice middle-aged woman will take me on and feed me peppermints and tell me I'm pretty.
Well, tell us about him. Knight is his name.
Knight is his name. Tis a Knight. If people follow racing, there was a famous racehorse, Tisnow. He's the only horse to have won the Breeders' Cup Classic twice. And Knight could be a stunt double if they were to shoot a movie about Tisnow. Dark bay, narrow white blaze, 16.3. I'm describing both Tisnow and Tis a Knight because they look so much alike. But my horse as gelding is just a golden retriever personality. So
fantastic.
Yeah, when I first got him, I was living in Southern California, and that was, as a teacher, it was kind of all I could afford. And I started out with a hunter jumper trainer, and then moved to eventing barn. I'm not an eventer, but I dabbled a little bit. It was Kingsway Farm across the street from Galway Downs. And so it was just a lovely equestrian community.
I had a horse
gorgeous,
there. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where Tammy Smith is.
Yeah.
This is wild.
A couple of short videos, a bunch of short videos when you were visiting Galway Downs.
Yeah. This is such a small world, you guys.
It really is.
Well, I guess I never knew Marguerite Henry. Marguerite was born in Wisconsin.
She was
a Milwaukee lady.
Yep, 1902, born in Milwaukee. She lived, if people are from Milwaukee, in the River West neighborhood. And she went to college. She went to Riverside University High School. I think that's the name. It's still a high school today. And then she went to college, which today would be UW in Milwaukee. She graduated 1922. So as I was kind of digging in, it was really interesting to me because my grandmothers, would have been kind of around the same age, and they didn't have that education and kind of the career path that she did. So she really seized opportunities, for what it was that she wanted to do, and went for it. She's a very inspiring person. She won, we know her because of the horse books that we love that stay with us, but she won 3 times the highest prize for children's literature. Actually, so the Newbery Medal, which is like an Academy Award or something of kids lit. She won that for King of the Wind. And then for Misty, of Chincoteague, and then for Justin Morgan had a horse. She won Newbery honors for them. So that's a big
That's
deal.
huge.
Deal.
Yeah.
And she wrote, 53 books?
More than that, almost
59 or something?
60, about 59.
Yeah. And
I think I
then,
looked it up and I thought there was 57 or 59.
Yeah.
and you found even more unpublished.
Yes. So the University of Minnesota has her personal papers at the Curlin Collection of Children's Literature. It's an open collection, like you don't have to be an academic. So I discovered this and made appointments to go see boxes. And so I would arrive at this research library and there would be these bankers boxes waiting for me. And it was like a treasure hunt to see what I could uncover.
It was interesting reading about that because I kind of was envisioning you going into like the bowels of some huge
me too.
facility and being stored away into some sort of clean room and given gloves and a mask. You know what I mean? I was like kind of envisioning something out of like James Bond or something.
I wish. I mean, it was cool. There was, so in the book, there's my last day there, I had signed up. There's some Wesley Dennis art there too. And so I thought, well, as long as I'm here, I might as well see the Wesley Dennis art.
We should explain who
Oh,
he is.
he was Marguerite's illustrator. So just like iconic. And he wrote books for other, let's see, I'm trying to say. I mean, a lot of people, you know, remember him.
I smell that beautiful old book.
Yeah, that's a good
Is this the original book?
Is this a volume 1 publishing?
That you grew up
think
with?
so. Well, it's one I found at a book sale. I don't take. I learned the hard way at Breithaupt. I had my childhood Misty with me at Breithaupt to promote my book the first year, the book you're holding, and a little boy came up and was eye level with Misty on the table, my vintage Misty. And I didn't want to be one of those people, like, you know, the stereotypical librarian. Don't touch that. Don't breathe to us. So I didn't say anything, but I was like, please, if you're going to pick it up, have clean hands and don't drop it. And so I learned, like, I needed to buy a travel Misty. So I don't take my childhood copy of Misty, but this is one I found more recently.
Mine was paperback.
That's because you're younger than me.
I don't know about that, but I think it was what I could afford was a lot of paperbacks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were easy to find
Yeah.
in the bookstore. They weren't as expensive as a hardcover. They were a little easier to store somewhere because you kind of shoved them in, and they all were more flexible. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you
I'll
could find them like at garage sales.
That's true.
You know,
Or
and
those little free libraries.
Oh yeah. Well, they didn't have those when I was a kid. But yeah, I think that's awesome.
So the Wesley Dennis. We'll go back to that. Okay, so because you were talking about the bowels and the James Bond. So I was waiting for the Wesley Dennis art, and there was some kind of confusion with where it was. And so I think to appease me, because I was a little impatient, the curator said, would you like to see the archives? And so I'm like, well, yeah, because again, this sounds like a cave and
you
cool.
described it really well in
Thank
here,
you. So
which added to that whole woo.
yeah, so it was amazing because I can't remember, I'd have to look at the book again, but like vast, like multiple football fields.
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, and you have to go through a hallway that reminded me of like if you go to a butterfly exhibit, how they have the double entry points. So it's that to get the temperature and the humidity level just right to preserve these documents. So they have more than Marguerite Henry papers there. They have Ellis Island documentation, and it's
cool.
yeah.
Is it below ground?
It's below ground.
It's like a bunker.
right on the.
I was kind of understanding. That's why I was like getting this whole like she's going to this secret situation and had to go through all this, you know, like you said, the double doors to make sure. And I was assuming there was ventilation to keep the humidity at a certain level. And I was like, wow,
for sure,
that's neat.
So that was one of those cases where it's like, where something happens, it's an inconvenience, but then it turned out to be something better than I could have hoped for, because they don't
advertise
people down there.
Yeah.
You
you
know,
don't want a bunch of people breathing down there because it adds humidity.
Yeah. So what does Marguerite Henry and Misty mean to you? Like, why did you write a book about her and Misty and start this whole journey?
well, do you have a few days? Well, so going back earlier, she gave me that entry point to horses. And so I could learn a lot about them before I could be with them in person. And I think also so when I taught English and history. And as a history teacher, I think about the past and, try to make it engaging for like, why is it important to know about the people who came before us or, our family, our ancestors and that. And so I was very big on, trying to encourage my students to do, informal oral histories, like talk to your grandparents. Many of my students had grandparents that came from other countries. And like, so what drove them to come here? What were the sacrifices they've made and are continuing to make for you, And so when I was probably in my later teens, maybe in college even, I don't recall the chronology on this, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, I had Marguerite Henry's address, and I'm going to get a little choked up. And so I just admired her so much, and I wanted to write her, and I never did. And it was one of those things where it's like this unfinished business. And I think also when I started, I didn't know this would be a book. I thought, I have an equestrian blog I've had for a long time called Saddle Seeks Horse. I write stories for Horse Illustrated and Sidelines. And so I'm in the writing realm, so to speak. But I thought I was writing a blog post or two or a series or maybe an article I could sell to a magazine. And then, so part of it was just for my own curiosity's sake, but then, kind of addressing this need that I had to connect with her when I never did. And then part of it was as I dug into who she was as a person and realizing what an amazing human she was, then it's like, she's someone who really needs to be celebrated. And so and not just for the beautiful stories, but for being a trailblazing female writer.
Exactly.
So I have a little gripe with a museum in Chicago. So to give you an example, so she lived in the Chicago area for many years. And even when she was newlywed, she got married in the 1920s and her husband got a job in the city. So they moved from Wisconsin, I'm sure much to their chagrin, to Chicago. And anyway, so there is an American Writers Museum in Chicago, and it's lovely. And they have an exhibit of Chicago writers, and they have an exhibit of trailblazing female writers, and they have an exhibit for children's authors. And there's no mention of her, So it's like she covers all those, bases, and the way her legacy is still strong in people. So when I started writing Marguerite, Misty, and Me, it was just this, like you said, with Rancho Santa Fe and Temecula and all the this web of people. And so I've connected with people in their 70s and 80s who were friends of hers when they were little kids. I connected with her last illustrator and all of these people who just can attest to her character and her love, really. I think that was her secret ingredient for her stories, really, was just love for children and wanting to delight them. But I can keep going on and on. I'm getting a little...
Oh, you're fine.
But it's just fine. It's really cool you were able to find people who knew her, because she was in her mid to late 90s when she passed, right?
Yeah, she was 95. She died in 1997.
Mid-90s, and 1997. So... finding people that knew her is probably more and more challenging. I mean, the 90s weren't that long ago, but, you're here in the Midwest. She lived for decades with her husband out in Southern California. So,
and came back.
Finding people to, to find and talk to.
Well, again, the horse world is small. So I, bought Night when I was in Southern California and relocated back to where I'm from in Illinois. And was the new kid at this barn where I board him now. It's lovely. And so there was a woman in the parking lot. She was walking to her car. I was walking to my car. She was wearing olive green riding breeches, and I thought they were cute. So I was like, hey, I like those breeches. And then it was like, oh, I'm Susan. And she introduced herself. And so then we were talking, and she told me where she lived. And I was like, oh, I'm trying to track down some people. And I had names. Actually, some gentleman who grew up in Wayne, was not at all equestrian, found my blog because I had a few blog posts. One is a photo of Misty with a little girl riding her from like the 1950s. And so then as I started finding more information about Marguerite, I did all these blog posts. And so this man came across them, sent me an email and was like, hey, I just wanted to thank you for reminding me of my childhood. And so then, of course, I pounced on that. I was like, oh, did you meet Marguerite Henry? And he said, I remember the pony in the field, but I wasn't one of the kids that went there. But I know the names of the people who went there. So I'm like, okay, tell me. So the woman in the olive breeches at my new barn, I ran some of these names past her and she was able to kind of connect me in. And
isn't that cool? Yeah. That's so cool.
Small world. And that's really cool.
Was Misty of Chincoteague real? Was it fiction? Was it nonfiction?
It's both. Okay. Yeah. So here's what I discovered.
Mixture of both.
It's both. So the Beebe family, the main characters in the book, they were real. Misty of Chincoteague, I mean, she was really a real Chincoteague pony. She's about 13 hand, Palomino Pinto, and she lived with Marguerite Henry. And then she lives on as a Breyer. I think one of the most popular models they have.
Who's this?
This is just an adorable Chincoteague pony that, they're so cute. You guys need to come maybe next year. Yeah. This year is going to be a little crowded because it's the 100th swim.
Oh my God.
But so the storyline of Misty is based on the Saltwater Cowboys and the Pony Penning Week, and all of that is true. Those are true events that happen.
We should quickly delve a little bit more into that.
Yeah.
It's a nonprofit, and it's the fire department.
Fire company, yeah. So there were a couple of very devastating fires in the, I believe, early 1920s on Chincoteague. And so they decided they needed to raise money to get a fire truck, which I'm guessing at the time may have been pulled by a horse. I can't remember. I know Cindy Faith, the historian at the Museum of Chincoteague, would know the answer to this. But anyway, so they were coming up with ideas for how to fundraise and all this. And then somehow they decided that they could round up some ponies and sell them. And, they're a hardy stock. They would be good for your children to ride around.
The ponies are wild and they live on Chincoteague Island.
Yes.
Which is right next door.
It's very, very close, very nearby. So they started rounding them up, and I have a friend who has an amazing website, Chincoteague Pony History. So she could go on and on. You should have her on sometime.
Yeah.
But so just the very Cliff Notes version is that the ponies are rounded up, the foals are sold at the auction. This all occurs the last week in July. So this year the pony swim is July 30th, and I will be there, and I'm doing a couple talks on the island in that. And then the day after, so July 31st, is when they have the foal auction. So last year, I think there were around 80 foals, and they're all just darling. There are a lot of pintos, a lot of color, but adorable palominos and solid bays,
and just keep some.
Yes,
continue
they will.
The herd.
Those are called buybacks. So what'll happen is there's a committee of the Saltwater Cowboys Volunteer Fire Company, and they've studied the bloodlines, and they know which ones they want to keep.
Now there's a website, right?
Yeah.
What stallion has what band of mares? So what foal is by what stallion out of what mare? Well, obviously they would know what the foals, on the side of the dam. But it takes a village to learn all that and study it and keep an eye on it all.
For sure. And there's a website, Misty Haven, right?
Oh, so Misty's Heaven is a website for all Misty fandom. And then there's a Chincoteague Pony Pedigree database. So if you saw a foal that you wanted, or, you could look again, I have a thoroughbred, that's what I know, the Jockey Club database, seeing the sires and dam going way back to Man of War or whatever. They don't go back quite that far, but there are records. And there's some photographers that hike Chincoteague, especially during foaling season. And so they kind of know which stallions and which mares have been together, and they update on Facebook. And then there's a lot of boat captains because it's a mecca for pony loving people. So people that want to go there and see them up close, one of the best ways to do it, even not during Pony Penning Week, is to hop on one of the many
I want to go now.
Yeah, you need to go.
I mean, I had no idea this was going on until I read your book. And I'm like, wow, how many times have you attended?
3 times. So I've been to Chincoteague 5 times, and I've attended the swim 3 times. This will be my 4th.
Wow.
And it doesn't get old. It's one of those things, it's different every year. So my first year, I was in a kayak. I was by myself. If I had known you two, I would have invited you.
She talks about her story in
I was
the
by
book.
myself, and it was like summer camp for horse-loving people. So even though, and I'm an introvert, so like I don't mind being alone. I like a little peace and quiet, but it was kind of fun to get to connect with other people. So I saw them, and they were, I'm guessing, about 30 feet from me. And so my kayak is swaying, and you could hear them, you know, with their breath, and the cowboys are like, hey, hey.
How
And
deep is the water? Because they wait until the tide is as low as it can be.
slack tide. I don't really know, but it's different.
Swimming,
So last year, so my first year was 3 years ago, and that they were walking for a very long time, and then they swam. Last year, it was slack tide was like a high tide. And so they were swimming for longer. And the crazy part is my niece and her husband were in kayaks, and my sister went, and so she and I were in the boat, so we could see them ahead of us because the kayaks get to be the closest, kind of like the front row seats. And the path that they picked was so close. My niece told me, she's like, if I put my hand out, I would have touched the ponies as they went by.
In the kayak.
Wow.
I vote for the kayak.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
That's pretty cool.
I know, and I loved how because I was like, is it really that cool? And then in the book, you write, you're like, you're waiting, and do they really swim, or is this just a gimmick? And they really swim.
Yes.
It's not a gimmick. It's really amazing.
2 islands that are not connected. They're islands.
Yeah. I think that's amazing.
That's amazing. You said, so this year is the 100th swim.
The 100th, yes, the 100th.
Anniversary.
So it's been going on longer than that, but it's the 100th year of Pony Penning Week with like and there's a carnival too. So what I learned, and if people want to buy my book or read it, check it out from their library. Marguerite, Misty Me, chapters 15 and 16, I think pretty much go into like the day by day of Pony Penning Week. So like the Monday beach walk is amazing because you get to see the Atlantic sunrise, and the cowboys are bringing down the northern herd to the corrals. So they'll meet up with the southern herd because they have to get them staged, you know, before they do the big swim. And then on Tuesdays, vet checks. So they're all vetted.
Oh.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think about it, they're not domesticated.
You said they sell about 80 foals. So how many?
Yeah.
I mean, think about how many horses that is.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. They have a grazing rights for 150 ponies on the island.
So that's part of what they're doing is controlling their population.
Yes. And going to the Foal auction is like a very emotional experience, because you can see people that, you know, grew up on this book, and it's been like their lifelong dream to have a Chincoteague pony. And it's interesting too, because I was, you know, the more I've gotten away from my childhood love of horses, and then like, so now I'm also at an eventing barn. I don't event, but I'm learning how to ride. I just got a dressage saddle a couple years ago, and so I'm learning I still look like a hunt seat rider. It drives me crazy. But when you get, I feel like we get into these discipline or breed specific silos, and then like we don't really know what's going on in other parts of the horse realm.
I don't. That's me.
Yeah.
All the way.
So when I went to Chincoteague, it was just this very like refreshing, like the people who are there, and many of the people there would not classify themselves as equestrians at all. And maybe they've never had a horse, but they just love horses. Like you don't have to be a rider to love a horse and to love the idea of wild ponies. And so it's very appealing. It's a very friendly, feel good thing. But then to see the people, like there was a family ahead of me that shows at WEC in Ocala, and I'm thinking like, what do they want with a feral pony? I'm sure they have fabulous, you know, very expensive show horses, and they said, oh, they already had one at home and they're getting another one.
Oh, cool.
So, and then I did a talk earlier this year at the Pony Club convention, and a mom and her daughter, who I'm guessing is maybe middle school age, came up to me and they said, we have a Chincoteague pony. And I was like, oh, what year did you get it? I was sitting behind them.
Shut up!
So if you read about the auction, about the little girl that had, like, she was face painted, she was so cute raising her hand, that was her.
Wow.
And you got to meet them.
Yeah. So
Do they know?
Yeah,
They're in
because
your-
I was at a point, I had my books there, and I'm like, wait a minute, and I like dove into the book, and I read it, and I was like, this was you, right? And they said, yeah.
This is wild.
Small world, Megan.
It is so small, you guys. So another question. You have logged over 8,000 miles digging into Marguerite's life from California to Virginia and Milwaukee to Minnesota. What's an unforgettable moment from that journey?
So many. I mean, obviously, you can't beat sitting in a kayak, seeing this epic scene from your favorite childhood book. But when I was at the University of Minnesota, they had many of her awards there. And so I held her Newbery Medal for King of the Wind in my hand. And it was just so cool because not just from King of the Wind, which is a great story, but as an educator and as a lover of books, like I've read so many Newbery Medal, Maniac McGee, and, you know, Bud Not Buddy, I think maybe got an honor if it didn't get the Newbery. And so, you know, and as a teacher, teaching about like, these are really special books. And so to see like, it's not just a sticker on the front of the book, like it's a real thing. And I'm holding this that, and Marguerite, the history around her accepting that honor, like, Misty had already been published and she was doing a lot of publicity appearances, taking the pony with her to different places. And she took Misty, they were having the American Library Association conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan that year. She brought the pony and like brought her into this fancy swanky hotel. She was not allowed to attend when they had the dinner, probably for sanitary reasons. But in my young reader version,
because you would think back in the day they may not have really as much as it
thought about
now.
it.
Yeah. So I did find through nerding out and my young reader version, I don't know if you want to hold that up. I wrote, it's the same book, but I had a lot of grandmas coming up and saying, oh, I'm going to buy this for my granddaughter. She loves horses. And it's, if they were an advanced reader, but my middle school background, I kind of pared it down and added in some photos. So there's a photo in there of Misty in the banquet hall.
Oh, yeah.
The aftermath.
Oh,
and
here
so you
it
can
is.
see like ashtrays and all the napkins on the table and the chairs pulled back. And so that was really cool because I thought I could just see Marguerite being like, well, we need to get a picture. You know, she wasn't invited to come to
there it
that.
is.
We're going to, she
one.
got to go anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can zoom in. Probably not. But there it is. And I just want...
What page is it on, Megan?
Good point. 31. I just want to point out, too, in this book, before or the beginning of every chapter, there is a photo. I love looking at the photos. Yeah, and then in the back of the book, all images are credited and you can find out who and what and where and the year. So I thought that was very special.
A little bit of illustration in here, some fun little, which is awesome.
Well, thank
Love
you. Thank you.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, because you talk about it in the book about, you know, you spent a long time up in Minnesota going through the archives, and you even talked about, like, you're touching little pieces of paper with Marguerite's notes. And it's like her little scrawlings, and she kept everything in, you know, files, and like that had to have been really surreal to go through that and be like, wow, like getting into her mind, and wow, this is her you know, was kind of her personal effects.
It was. And what I thought was really neat is I felt like her writing evolved almost as like a kid cut and paste scrapbook type approach. And I know that like when she did a lot of traveling also. So when she wrote the book, it's a lesser known book. It's called The Wildest Horse Race in the World. And it's about the horse race in Siena, Italy, around the town square. It's really crazy because they're riding bareback. And it's like, I think the cobblestone streets and stuff. And they still do it. It's a very medieval era race that's been going on for hundreds of years. She, you know, got artifacts from the places. So there's a box in Minnesota and it has like the little ornamental thing that was on the racehorse's bridle. And so I could touch those. And there was a inventory list in there as though it was given out to a teacher to share with her class so they could see the pieces, the artifacts really of what went into the story. And so I thought that was very special.
Really cool. I think that's really neat.
That she did so much research on each book.
She did.
Like, that's what was amazing to me. Just like yourself. I mean, she really researched for every book.
And the other thing I thought about too, I did a lot of research, but also I can Google. I've got Ancestry.com. I could do, and then it was like, she was calling people and writing letters. And, I faced some discouragement in that my letters, that's slow and people don't respond and that sort of thing. But she really was very persistent and just a smart lady, and obviously very winsome with people and getting the information that she needed to have.
I know one thing I learned in the book that I don't remember knowing when I was a kid. Did you know there was like a fan club newsletter?
No, had no idea.
I had no idea. And I was like, really? I was like, wow, okay, learned something new.
Because that was before, I mean, I don't know how old the two of you are, but it was before your time. So it was like late 60s, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, way before my time.
Yeah. But I mean, that's very cool that she did that. And one of my sources, I learned a lot of information that I couldn't put in the book because I didn't know if I could verify it. But someone who was a source said that Marguerite financed that newsletter herself, which I wouldn't doubt because at the archives, there are just file folders and file folders and file folders of fan mail and letters. And I meet people when I go to events, at Breithaupt. I'll be at Equine Affair this fall. And, it's like, I wrote a letter to Marguerite and she wrote me back.
Well,
I thought that was surprising. She wrote back to every fan and every letter.
And did you say her sister helped her with some of that?
So I came across some.
That would have been monumental.
Yeah. Which I thought just showed how much she loved her fans. I think it was when she was writing the Medicine Hat Stallion book. I read a letter, and it was from Gertrude, her older sister, and it said something to the effect of like, "I'm going to answer your questions. Marguerite is away for the time. She's off on an adventure, bringing a new book to light and to life."
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's cool. I mean, very interesting, because I was definitely a fan of so many authors. And so when she mentioned that, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember reading all those books as a kid. I was a total bookworm.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Is there a universal message in Marguerite, Misty, and Me that will resonate with readers no matter their age or their geography?
Well, I think you're never too young or too old to do what you want to do. And Marguerite, when she was 7, her dad gave her a little writer's desk, and it was in the corner of the kitchen, and she started writing. And he was a printer. He had a printing business in Milwaukee. And around the age of 12, I couldn't find the exact year, but I think it was around 12, she entered a writing contest and won some money and a prize. And she thought that was a pretty cool way to make money. And so she used that money to go to church camp. And at church camp, around a campfire, people were talking about their hobbies, and that there was this moment, she just people were saying active pursuits like swimming or playing tennis. And she's like, my hobby's words. And so I think that was kind of a step for her, owning that. And then also, she was a city kid who always wanted a pony, always wanted a horse, and she didn't get one until she was in her mid-40s. And that is the horse that generations are still falling in love with, Misty of Chincoteague. And it was like, the agreement was Misty would go back to BB Ranch and be bred. And she did eventually, but Marguerite had her, I think, for about 10 to 11 years at her house in Illinois. And she shared her. She shared that pony. I mean, I gave a talk at my local library in Illinois, and a woman, I'm guessing in her late 70s, raised her hand at the end. And she said, when I was in 4th grade, our class went to Marguerite Henry's house, and we all took turns riding Misty. And
That's
so
amazing.
just, I was kind of like, okay, that wouldn't happen today. And I'm sure there were no riding helmets or waiver forms and all the things.
Yeah, that back in the day. No
But,
such thing.
and I had someone just recently email me, and she said she has a lock of Misty's mane.
Oh, no
And she's not sure
way.
what to do with it. I get that where people have things or signed copies, and they're like, my kids don't care about
Yeah.
it, so
What do you do?
I'm working strategically with some places that, it would be nice to have some sort of
Yeah.
celebratory display, whether,
Yeah.
just short term or permanent installation.
What about on Chincoteague?
Yeah, so Chincoteague has a fabulous museum.
Mm-hmm.
It's very small. They have the taxidermied Misty and Stormy,
That's amazing.
which is kind of sad.
Kind of creeped me out, honestly. I'll be honest, when I was reading that.
Yeah.
But whatever.
It,
Each to his own.
right, exactly. They aren't the first equines to.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
No, a lot of famous ones were.
yeah. But so the BB Ranch, which is the house in the storyline, when Stormy Misty's Foal, when there was that big hurricane that came through and wiped out a lot of ponies, and Misty was pregnant. Like, this is all true too.
Mm-hmm.
They took her into the kitchen because they had to evacuate the island, and she lived and she was fine, and she didn't deliver the foal till after the storm. But so that house is still there. And the last gentleman who lived there needed to sell. He was a BB. And so there was an effort, you may have seen it a few years back on Facebook, and that people were raising funds to help the museum acquire the ranch. So
wow.
they have I haven't seen it yet. I hope to see it when I'm there next month. Some type of display, honoring that scene and hopefully Marguerite.
That's amazing.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, this brought back a lot of memories and answered a lot of questions I think I had. Like, you're young and, you kind of got, I believed the books to be true because it was like, wow, first you thought it was fiction, and then the teacher's like, no, Chincoteague and Chincoteague Island are real, and there's ponies there, and they do the swim every year, so then you're like, oh, it's all real. You kind of go through that when you're young, because, I know I was in elementary school when I read this, so before, 5th grade and younger, I don't remember exactly, but, you kind of flip that switch from thinking it's fake, like Clifford the Big Red Book.
Oh, right,
to going,
right.
oh my God, she's a real pony, and these people, the BBs are real, and everything is, and then you just think everything is real,
Right.
and so it's assumed that the whole story about Stormy was real. You just start thinking all of that is 100% real, and Marguerite did a really good job of marrying
Yes.
the real in the fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
it was
sure.
really neat, so.
For sure.
I think my favorite part was when you describe Marguerite in her first job, and she walks in and says, I'm here to write, and I will do it for free even if you don't want me. And I just thought it was so inspiring.
And her tenacity in those early years as basically a news writer, of chasing people down and just not letting them walk away, and
she's
going after the story like a true reporter.
Yeah,
and that
totally.
carried through for her entire career.
Yeah, for sure.
All the fact finding she did.
A lot of moxie, a lot of I think that first story you were mentioning that she wrote, it was a building was being dedicated in Chicago, and all these dignitaries were there, and it was like the former governor of Kentucky gave the speech, and she realized she didn't take any notes. So what does she do? I would probably, hang my head and just be like, it didn't work out. No, she weaves her way through the crowd to approach the former governor and tell him she needs to talk to him, and she would like him to elaborate on his key points again. So, yeah.
Really tenacious.
It was the book I needed to read this month.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was your book was very inspiring,
Thank you.
she's a role model.
Yeah.
I think for all women and all children. I really enjoyed it. I was like, I need a little bit more Marguerite.
Aww.
Yeah, and to find out, she wrote out many, many versions of the book. Obviously she had an editor and a publisher and all this, but, sometimes she worked on books for years.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me too, because I didn't normally think about what do their lives look like.
Yeah.
I just enjoy their books, right? You don't.
Well, and if you're
And
not
I love her
an author
story.
of a lot of books, you don't really understand the full process, especially as it's evolved over the decades. It changes, you know, from handwriting to typing to now everything's on a computer.
Yeah.
And Google,
Yeah.
no letters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It used to be you had to go visit all these places, and now I think a lot of research is just done online.
Well, and I think about that too, because like, how would she know who to contact? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when she was writing Justin Morgan Had a Horse, like, how did she know the connection with Vermont and like the people and the town? Like, because I Google that, so I'm assuming I know she had good relationships with librarians, but just like, how do you find that in a
find
And the
resource?
time it
Written
takes
notes?
to read.
You know, the scraps of paper. It was like, you wonder, oh, did that inspire this? You know, did it take her down this road, turn her this way to this way? So fascinating.
And she had a lot of fans write her to say, I've got a great story idea for you. And I thought it was very charming and empowering, because she would always kind of put it back on them. Like, I think that sounds like an amazing tale that you should be the one to bring it to the world. And not in like, you know, just do it yourself, kid. Not like that at all.
Yeah.
But the way it was worded, it was like
Encouraging people to
very
become writers.
Example.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, what an amazing woman.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I have one last question. At the heart of your book is a story about inspiration and connection. What do you hope readers, especially kids, take away from Marguerite, Misty, and Me?
Well, I hope kids follow their curiosity. You know, it doesn't have to be horses. You know, for me it was horses, but I'm assuming the audience of readers will be horsey. But there's so much just with the perseverance, and also that to talking to people and going places, you know, might be underrated. And I had to do a lot of going places and talking to people to kind of get her story to life, because a lot of the information for these books was not digitized. I couldn't call upon Chat GPT, you know what I mean? Like, it's things that you can only discover because it's, you know, things in the world that you can touch and feel and talk to people and that. So, I don't know. So following curiosity and, you know, not being afraid to stay off the Google.
But stay on YouTube. Watch our videos.
Yes, only for our besties.
Sorry. had to add that in.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, from when you start, like you mentioned earlier in the video, you mentioned that like you were originally kind of writing this as maybe like a vlog or, you know, maybe an article you might sell, but you weren't really intending it to become a book, and then it morphed into one. How long, considering all of that, how long would you say it took?
It was about 2.5 years. Once I really committed to it, like, because I had mentioned, like, I wrote a couple blog posts and it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And it was just sort of a side thing of trying to find out. But from when I was like, okay, I need to be the one to do this because I'm geographically connected to these places where close to her. And so it was about 2.5 years. And a lot of that is really lonely, kind of, because as I'm fangirling out, like at the archives, for example, and I'm like getting a kick out of reading these little notes that she had, and I'm like, okay, does this even matter to anyone? And then to have it in a format to share with readers, and I've met people because they've read my book and they reach out to me, and I've met some more people who knew her. I met someone who knew her later in life, and I've met her via email. We haven't met in person yet.
Sure.
But anyway, she was the one that packaged up and sent a lot of the materials to the university after Marguerite passed. And so she said, I think it's quite possible you're the first person that's touched that, you know, the Newbery Medal or those different things. Yeah.
Can we dig in a little bit? Like, how did that happen? How did it happen after Marguerite passed, or whenever it was donated? How did like it go from Marguerite to that's where it went to that particular, you know?
Yeah, I get that question a lot just because, you know, she's obviously from Wisconsin,
right?
And her family
lived in Chicago. You mentioned that.
So the way it was explained to me when I was at the University of Minnesota is that they were one of the first institutions to kind of view children's literature as worthy of academic study. And there was a professor whose name escapes me at the time, but in some of the writing that I don't really talk about it in the book, but Marguerite referred to her as her mentor. So Marguerite was very close with at least one professor at the University of Minnesota.
There was a personal tie then.
There was a tie, and I know when I was on the island actually 2 years ago for Pony Penning Week, I stayed at Miss Molly's Inn, which is the bed and breakfast where Marguerite Henry stayed. It's this Victorian house where she was when she wrote Misty. And a woman there said, you know, I got my degree from University of Minnesota, and I think she was in journalism or something. And there was a Marguerite Henry talk, and she was speaking to the School of Education. And she said, you know, I'm not an educator, but I went because this is my childhood idol. You know, I got to see her. And so, so I know she gave at least one in-person talk there, and so that was the connection.
So cool.
That's neat. Yeah, it kind of made you wonder. I thought, well, it's maybe because, you know, you talked about the size of the archives, and I'm like, maybe it's just because it's this huge literature archive.
No,
but that's neat to know.
Children's literature.
Very cool.
They
All
have
the little things you want to know.
Yeah, they have other authors there too, and of course, I was so singly focused, you know, on Marguerite. But I do recall taking my picture or something with like the frog and toad, and I couldn't tell you who the author is. I know I remember the story from when I was a kid, so they have other authors there too. I'm sure.
How long were you there?
I was there. No, it was actually. I was there like separate times, a full week, just a whole week. It felt like longer. It felt like a time warp for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You were able to be like, was it a 12-hour day, an 8-hour day? Kind of a little bit of everything?
I don't remember. No, because they wouldn't. Yeah, it was long. But just because, you know, doing that quiet, like deep thinking work and on the computer, and like I had to store most of my stuff in a locker, and I could have a pencil and I could have a notebook like that and my cell phone, and
that's it.
Scanning a lot of documents.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because I've had people say my favorite chapter was when you were at the archive, because as I was reading it, I'm like, this is so nerdy. Like, who wants to pick up a book and read about being in a academic research library? Like, that sounds like a very unadventurous.
Very more personal, because you talked about you're touching Margaret's personal little pieces of paper and notes, and so it you know, made it way more personal. It's really interesting too. So you mentioned that there was a book that Marguerite had written that she specifically said not allowed to be published.
I was sad to read that.
But the whole manuscript is there.
Yeah.
My gosh.
You could go see it. It's
That's
about miniature
so sad.
horses. Yeah, and it was a lot of photographs, and the photographer he had done work for National Geographic and done portraits of various presidents and stuff. So, you know, like this would have been something people would have just loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I get it. I understand. She
didn't feel it was done, so she didn't want it.
Yeah. Well, there was something weird with that deal that never saw the light of day, but she wanted things well, I mean, I didn't really go into this in the book, but so I don't remember which publisher now at this point, but they took the story of Misty and kind of made it into mini books with little plot points, and I think she was very disappointed in that. Because if you think about it, you know, like this is her masterpiece, right? And then for it to be, I don't want to say dumbed down, but just
edited.
It doesn't keep with the character and all of that. So
and it was done solely to make money.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's understanding to be disappointed.
So how do our subscribers get your book?
And there's 2.
There's 2. Yes. And I have written other books too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
They could go to my author website, which is saddleseekshorse.shop, and I could sign a copy for them and send it out to them. But you could order at that other place online where people order everything.
we won't talk about that one, and we'll put her website in the description.
Yeah.
Yep. So
So this is my first book, Horses Adored and Men Endured, a memoir of falling and getting back up, because when I was 10, I wanted to marry a horse, and when I was in my 30s, living in Southern California, it was slim pickings. And so it's just kind of a rated G Bridget Jones Diary horse girl style.
I love it.
It's fun. It makes people. It's very cringy. Now, like, I wrote this. Gosh, it came out I think in 2017, and it feels a little cringy now. Like, wow, I can't. But then it's like people respond. I've seen them like walk up and see the cover and they laugh, and I think we need more laughter in the world.
Yeah,
so why not?
we do.
Yeah. So then this one is Unbridled Creativity, is like writing prompts for horse kids of all ages. And it's a good way for if you're at a horse show and you're hurrying up and waiting, or maybe you're a homeschool mom and you've got a horse crazy kid. So it's just different little things there.
I love it.
And then this one I don't like talking about, but it's quite popular. It's Strands of Hope, How to Grieve the Loss of a Horse, because there wasn't anything out there. And I wrote a blog post several years after I lost my previous horse, just like what I went through and what helped, what didn't help, when people mean well. But so anyway, I wrote a book because I had a mom from South Africa send me an email and was like, thank you so much. We just lost our pony unexpectedly, and this made my daughter and me feel a little bit better. So it was like, well, more people read books than read blogs, so I'll put it out into the world and maybe just help horse people know they're not alone and it's not weird
I
to
love
have
it.
grief. So
That's great.
anyway, but we have to end on a happy note.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Do you have more books planned?
I do. I actually have 2 in the works.
Ooh.
Okay, so I'm not a fiction writer, but I wrote a novella because I felt like I got to know Marguerite so well, and I feel like actually someone proposed the idea of making a one-woman show about Marguerite Henry, because they were like, they would love that at the Island Theater on Chincoteague. I am not a playwright and I'm not an actress. I'm not doing this, but I can sometimes in my head hear how she would say things. So I wrote a novella called Misty's First Christmas. And it's a story of when Misty came as a weanling to the farm in Illinois, and it's fictional. She escapes and has some capers out in the snowy countryside. But it was just kind of fun to write that. And then
what's the point of view on that book? Is it as Misty?
The point of view is a narrator talking about Marguerite and then this pony that's off adventuring and stuff.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's cute. So
we have some more books to read.
Yeah, it'll take you not very long because it's thin. But I'm hoping to have that ready for Briarfest. And then I'm working on a picture book with a very talented artist who's also an equestrian.
All right.
And it's Chincoteague pony related.
Neat.
And I haven't landed on a title yet, but there's a learning curve for me, and I'm inspired with Marguerite because I don't know anything about picture books. I mean, I've read a bunch of them, so I've had to kind of dig in and learn the how that works.
Yeah.
And so I'm in that. But my goal is to have that for next year, and I'm going to do a Kickstarter, I believe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Go
I can
get
reach
it.
out, but
Did Marguerite inspire, or like researching and learning how she researched and wrote her books, has that changed how you have approached your writing?
a little bit, yeah. So she loved revising. I don't love revising.
Yeah.
But she loved revising so much. She talked about it. It reminded her of currying a horse, so they had a nice shine. And I know that she was big on eliminating adjectives. I try to get rid of adverbs, but adjectives, and just in place putting in really stronger verbs. So everyone likes action.
Yeah.
So she's inspired me. And then also like how she kind of went after things. Like
You have
why
to.
not? You know, it's like
Yeah.
there wasn't at the time another book about Marguerite Henry. It's like, okay, I'll be the person.
Why not you?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Choose yourself.
Absolutely. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
Any more questions, Miss Megan?
No.
Keep saying we don't have any more, and then we have this conversation. And we have like 10 more questions. So thank you so much
Thank
for all your
you.
time.
You
Thank
guys are
you
so
guys
nice.
so
Thank
much for your
you.
time. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Buy the
you.
books.
Yeah, we're going to link this down. It'll be in the description down below here. Make sure you check it out.
Could I add one more thing?
Yes.
I don't know when this goes
Absolutely.
live, but
Yes.
if this goes up before the pony swim, which is July 30th of 2025, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be posting a lot in my Instagram stories and on Facebook. So if people want to follow me, it's at Saddle Seeks Horse. And then the other cool thing is I'm doing a Misty Reread book club on Facebook also. It'll be for the next several Monday nights leading up to, so it's basically every Monday night in July on
Okay.
my Facebook page. So
We need to check this out.
Yeah,
yeah, come join.
Excellent.
We could talk more.
Yeah. Let's do it.
it's a great idea.
This is awesome.
Cool. Well, thank
Thank
you again
you.
so
Thank
much
you.
for coming
Thank
up
you.
here
Appreciate
and
it.
joining the besties here and telling us all the things and putting up with our many questions about all the things about Marguerite.
I love it.
For
And
instance, how to say her name properly. You know, when I was a kid, I just looked at it and I think I asked somebody and they're like, it's Margaret. Oh, okay.
Margaret.
They're like, it's
Yeah.
just a fancy way to say Margaret. Well, but it's Marguerite.
Margaret, yeah. That's how Grandpa BB called her. He called her Margaret.
Oh, there you
So-
go.
Yeah.
She probably got that a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
See, very cool stuff. All right, well, you guys, before you
Thank
go,
you.
hit the subscribe, right, Miss Megan? It's free.
Please. It's free.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'd appreciate it so much. Let us know if you got questions. Check out. We'll have a bunch of links for her down below. Make sure more than one. Maybe show all the books.
Yeah, here.
All her books. She's a published
Second one.
author.
Ooh.
Here.
Need to get an
Again, she's got
octopus.
2 versions of the Marguerite, Misty, and Me. You have a kids version, you'd say, right?
Yeah, so the one with the colorful cover is middle grade. So if you had someone like probably 8 to 12. Yeah.
A young horse crazy
Yeah,
girl
or
boy.
older and you just don't want to read long chapters.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's me. I'm middle school.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much again
Thank
for your
you.
time. Please do hit the like, leave comments down below, and of course subscribe on your way out. But we appreciate it.
Hi,
Thank you so
guys.
much, Susan.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.